Yesterday I learned how to make a sabayon sauce. The result of this is now I have an egg white. What am I going to do with that egg white? I did a little research, and most of what I saw and trying to use up an egg white would take a lot of ingredients that I just don't have normally around. So I'm trying to find out ways to use up an ingredient without having to have a whole bunch of other ingredients that I wouldn't normally have. Two things that I can do every time. One is any kind of a scramble, right? So I could, my favorite thing to do, honestly, if I have one egg white, is I'll add one full egg to my one egg white, and I'll just make a scramble or an omelet out of it, right? So scramble, omelet, frittata. And what I've noticed is, even though I'm not like an egg white guy, when I have an egg white and a regular egg, I actually can't tell that there's a yolk missing. And I've served it to other people, and they're like, there's a yolk missing? Yeah, I would have no idea. So adding just one egg, scrambles, etc. The second thing you can do is to do a meringue-based dessert. I wonder if I spelled that right. I hope so. So there are three meringues that I found so far. The classic meringue, the Pavlova, and the Eton mess. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, so I'm just going to call it the Eton mess. I know people who pronounce button, and they make the O not silent, like button, so maybe it's supposed to be the Eton mess. Eating a mess, and that kind of sounds kind of funny too. Whatever, maybe one of you guys will teach me. The Pavlova and the meringue are very similar. The difference is this adds cornstarch and some vinegar, and so the inside becomes like a marshmallow, whereas the classic Pavlova, it's crispy and airy, and it's more crunchy, right? So this is more of a crunchy, dried out thing, whereas this is kind of a marshmallow interior with a crunchy outside. The Eton mess is when you take a classic, break it up into small pieces, and mix it in with some whipped cream, and it's like an ambrosia salad almost. So those are my three choices. I am going to attempt the Pavlova. That's the one with the marshmallowy inside. So all the meringues say that you should use glass and not plastic, so I'm just using a glass that I have here. You want to whip this to soft peaks. Once you get to soft peaks, you're going to want to start adding the other ingredients. There's a lot of controversy on how to make these things, when to add the sugar. By the way, over here I have a quarter cup of sugar. That's quite a bit. It's an alarming amount. What I love about cooking for one is that you start to realize just how much you're putting into your body, because you're cooking just for yourself or maybe two people. So you're like, oh, 4 tablespoons of sugar, that's a lot. That's a lot more than the sabayon was, right? That was only 2/3 of a tablespoon. That's coming along nicely, as you can see there, right? Okay, now I'm gonna add in the 1/4 teaspoon of vinegar. I'm going to put in a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, which is 2 of my little 1/8 eyedroppers. Okay. By the way, vanilla is not a classic ingredient in the Pavlova, but some recipes look for it. Now, they say to add sugar a little bit at a time, so I'm going to add some of this right now. Good enough. And then 1/4 teaspoon of cornstarch. And that cornstarch and vinegar is what changes it from a meringue to a Pavlova. Now we get this up to get this closer to stiff peaks. I'll add the rest of the sugar and then get to stiff peaks on it. If you're wondering why you have to grind the sugar, it's because it needs to be totally incorporated and not be granulator in there, and so it's dissolving. But by putting in the food processor first, you get a big head start. If the sugar does not completely absorb, it'll cause your Pavlova to weep in the oven, and then that'll ruin the crunchiness of the outside. Now, you can over whip this, so be careful. But there she is, and you can see I've got stiff peaks there. The peaks are holding their shape, and it's super glossy and shiny looking. So I'd say I've achieved Pavlova status. We'll find out when we pull it out of the oven. Aren't you guys amazed? Like, from one egg yolk, we made that very filling sabayon, and then from one egg white, we've made this unbelievable Pavlova. So I'm trying to figure out if I want to make 1 or 2 out of this. It'd be great to make 2, because then that would mean less sugar per serving, right? So I'm going to try to make 2. If it doesn't work, then I'll just squish them into 1. But here we go, putting them on the parchment paper that I had ready. Looks like 2 will work. That's good. That means only 2 tablespoons. Still quite a bit, but quite a bit less than 4. Half as much. Well, that one looks pretty good. So one of the techniques I heard was you go around the edges and you kind of lift it upwards. So you get this like little coney kind of shape, and then you squash the top down. I thought it looked really cool with the top like that. And then you swirl the top, and you get yourself a cute little top. And there you go. So there we have it. And so yeah, this definitely made 2. And I just need to get these into the oven. Now, they cook at a low heat. You're not so much baking them as you are drying them out. So a real meringue cooks at a lower temperature for a longer time. So you're really drying it out. Whereas these, a little bit higher temperature, but still not high. So the Pavlovas are in the oven at 275 degrees. I'll leave them there for 40 minutes. I'm kind of guessing a little bit because most of the meringue recipes are for giant cakes. Right now I'm making these little mini guys, but I think 40 should do it. And then if I was going to be actually doing the actual meringue instead of Pavlova, the meringues need to go at 200 or 250, depending on the recipe I've read, 200 or 250, and you leave them in there for like 75 minutes so that they really dry out on the inside and get crunchy. So that's the big difference, is the chewiness versus the crunchiness. Pavlova down. At some point, maybe I'll try the classic meringue and that eaten mess that we saw. But in 40 minutes. After 40 minutes, by the way, I have to turn the oven off, but leave them in there for another 20 minutes because they'll crack if they cool too quickly. So you want to leave them in the oven off for 20 minutes or so. Some people leave them overnight. And then you would want to top them with whipped cream, which I don't have. So I'm going to top them with some jam. I have no fresh fruit and no whipped cream right now, so jam it is. I just took my Pavlovas out of the oven and check that out. Listen to how light that is. Oh, I'm not supposed to take them out, by the way. I just remembered. You're supposed to leave them in there for 20 minutes so that they don't cool too quickly and crack. So the oven goes off. I'll put them back in. I'll just leave them in there for 20 minutes. The oven will come down in temperature. I'll actually leave the oven open a little bit so it comes down faster. And otherwise, these can crack as they collapse, as they cool down. Well, you guys can see my Pavlovas are completely cooled, and they did not crack. They are so cool. First of all, they smell awesome. So notice that they're a little bit brown and not beautifully porcelain white. That's because of the vanilla extract. So a lot of people prefer not to put vanilla in here. And instead, what they do is they top this with whipped cream and with fruit. So the Pavlova, also, if you're going to do that, you might actually push in before you cook it. You put a dent in the top so that there's a kind of, they're so crispy. They're so light. They're like so light. And they're supposed to be chewy on the inside. I'm not going to eat one right now because I'm going to make dinner soon. But maybe I'll have this a little bit later for dessert. You need to store these in an airtight container. So I could put them in a Ziploc bag, but I noticed these little containers are like the perfect size. By the way, you don't want to store these in the fridge because that'll completely destroy their incredible texture. So I'm going to put these on the counter, and they should last. They say that a Pavlova may be 24 hours. I think it'll last longer than that. The actual meringue, those can last like 3 days without a problem. So I would suggest that these can last at least 2. Oh look, there's a little crack. I think that happened when I put the lid on. Oh well, it's still gonna be yummy. I'm ready to try my Pavlovas, and I put them on a box that was a little unstable, apparently. It was empty, and so when I put them on there, they just slid right off and hit the counter at literally this far of a drop, and they shattered. So that's disappointing. If I was gonna serve this for a dinner party or whatever, that would be embarrassing. However, you can now see, like, listen to how crunchy this is. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then if I dig inside of here, now that it's all broken anyway, this part here is squishy like a marshmallow. It's so cool. So it really did come out perfect before I dropped it. Now, if this happens to you, you don't have to worry about it. Number one, if you reassemble it, you can actually put whipped cream on there and then put your fruit on it, and nobody would even know. Or you can actually cut it up and mix it into some some whipped cream and some strawberries, and it would be like an ambrosia salad. Well, that's the eaten mess. The eaten mess has probably been invented because all the people who messed these up, like I did. I'm gonna pour a little hot jam on here. I melted it. It's a little runnier than I would like, but still delicious. And I'm gonna dig in. So, super crunchy outside, marshmallowy inside. Oh my God, those two textures together are incredible. The crispiness of the edge is so cool, but that marshmallowy inside. Can you believe I made this from an egg white? I made 2 of them from 1 egg white. I mean, how cool is that? I'll probably try backing down on the sugar to see if they still taste as good. So I can have a little more, like maybe half of it, and then and try gluing up from there. But bottom line, if you're not trying to make a pavlova or a meringue or an eat mess from your leftover egg whites, I think you might be missing out.